like to call to order regular meeting of the Board of Education, September 24th, 2013 at 7 p.m. Kathy, would you call the roll?
Blakely?
Yes.
Gaspar?
Yes.
Impastato?
Present.
Hodge?
Here.
Locke?
Yes.
Jukes?
Here.
Dremmel?
Yes. Mr. Gasper, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yes. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is to open the public hearing for the 2013-2014 fiscal year budget. Do I have anyone here tonight who would like to address the board only regarding the budget? We do intend to take action later in the meeting tonight, so now's your chance to speak to us. All right, I officially call the hearing closed. We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Dr. Higgins, are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
There are not.
Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Stoops, second by Impastato. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, next we'll move to public comments. If anyone wishes to address the board this evening under public comments, please see our recording secretary, Kathy Scafidi. She'll give you your pink sheet that we'd like your full name and address on the form as we're required by state law to keep a full set of minutes. If you prefer to provide comments to the entire board in writing, Kathy also has a blue sheet that she could give you, and she'll make sure that all board members get a copy of that. When you address the board, we will not enter into dialogue on an issue. That doesn't mean we don't take your issues seriously. If you have any unanswered questions, a board member or an administrator will get back to you. If you have any visual aids or prompts, please have them approved by Dr. Hitchens, our board elected secretary, prior to your presentation. We ask that everyone that addresses the board to please come forward to the table so that we can all hear you. Kathy, do we have all the pink sheets tonight?
We do.
Okay, at this point, if anyone else wishes to address the board, we're going to ask you to please fill out a blue sheet that Kathy will distribute to all of us. We have all of our speakers here tonight. I'd first like to call Marcia Swift. Good evening.
I was very excited. I was actually greeted today as a 3-minute mom from somebody I didn't know, so very exciting. I am here tonight to just continue what I was talking about last week. Last week I focused a little more on special ed and some of the issues that I believe my son has not received from the school district over the years. But tonight I'm here to talk more about what's going on with our departments in music and extracurricular activities. As I noted earlier, I happened to be the parent in February who was first to realize this was going on because of some issues we already had that were ongoing in the marching band department. And so I happened to have my eye on the ball, and a lot of people didn't know the things that were going on that we felt that we were aware of. Those things were that we saw issues that the teachers are working as kind of a fraternity or sorority. They're, from what I can tell, all friends from college. One of them was...
You're welcome to speak, but if we're going to talk about identifiable staff members, you're welcome to address us in closed session so that you're not speaking about our employees publicly.
All right, so we can not do that. So what happened is that some changes were made. And those changes were not discussed with other departments that would be affected by the extracurricular changes. And in fact, Kathy Dremmel, I walked into her at Panera Bread talking to the director about this very issue. And we discussed that once, and then I called you again to follow up. And the changes went ahead and were made that nobody else knew were going to happen. So now it's affected not only the stage and kids who are in the plays and musicals, but it now has affected anybody who wants to be in swing singers, and it's also affected all of our athletes, which when we talked to Ms. Hitchens and some of the other people at the school district when these things came to our understanding, we pointed out to them very generously each time that the steps they were making were getting further and further away from what was best for our kids, and that were they really going to now change policies that were going to affect all of our school athletes, all of our marching band kids, at the expense expense of, from what I can tell, all of the drama department kids. Because as you came to the improv troupe group last year, all of those kids pretty much were in the winter play, and now they can't be in swing singers because we made season changes. And we have now affected the entire group of winter play students at the expense of, for their expense for the marching band. And the marching band has set themselves up in a way that they get first dibs on all the kids early in the spring, and it's not a really fair system. But when you're all friends and nobody's checking you, it's very easy to do those things. So when we spoke up as parents and saw that this was about to happen, we thought we'd go to the school and explain this to them and, just say, hey, what's going on with this? And we really didn't get anywhere. All we got was, Mrs. Swift, you're the only one who's complaining, which is pretty much what you tell all parents when they complain. So what we've discovered is that...
Can you summarize?
Sure. And what we've discovered is that all of these parents out there were not told about this. You are on the stage board, I believe, Kathy, and the president and vice president didn't even know about the changes. So you had already been privy to that information, and when we went to Monday night before school started, the parent meeting, I think they were pretty direct with you that they didn't know about these changes. So the stage people were not informed.
I'd like to ask you to not direct your comments directly at me. It's extremely uncomfortable because I'm not in a position for us to have this discussion here. So if you have concerns about our programs, we're really interested in hearing, but
Okay.
it's very
So can we-
uncomfortable for all of us to point fingers at
Okay.
particular people.
Excellent. So
We're
what I'd like
interested
to
in
do
programs.
is request that we have a meeting with all the parents who were negatively affected by the changes. And because you've told us you've pulled all of them aside to talk to them, so surely you have a list of these children and students. And we'd like to meet with you as a group to discuss what we're going to do going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Swift? Good evening.
Hello. Well, I was going to defer my 3 minutes to my wife, Marcia, but I think she's done, so that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Ernest Yeager?
Hi, I'm here to speak on behalf of the proposed improvements to the high school field and stadium. And I'd just like to say, my name's Ernest Jaeger. Thank you for allowing me to speak. As the former president of the Bulldogs Lacrosse Club, I saw challenges last year which could be rectified by the improvements of the high school stadium and fields. One, practices for the lacrosse team shifted between Rotolo Middle School and West Main Park, depending on weather and field conditions. Artificial turf would solve any field condition problems. Being able to practice at the high school would solve any sudden severe weather problems or conditions, as the students would have access to indoors, and would increase safety conditions as an athletic trainer is on premise at the high school. Practice times could also be improved by having the student athletes practice right after school. Last year, practices had to run from 5 to 7. By the time some of the students arrived home from school, there was barely time for them to do homework before they had to get ready to go to practice. Number 2 is the games. The lacrosse team had 7 home games scheduled for the high school field. Due to field conditions and weather conditions and running the risk of destroying the field, 5 of those games were moved to Rotolo. Several games were moved from Rotolo to schools with artificial turfs. There were added busing expenses, as well as some confusion and quite a bit of inconvenience on moving a game with only a few hours' notice. Lacrosse is the fastest growing sport in the Midwest. Bulldogs lacrosse grew from 25 student athletes in 2012 to over 40 athletes in 2013, and is projecting similar growth in years to come. I can only assume the boys and girls soccer, marching band, and even football all fell victim to our current field condition policy. I'm just here to say, please, let's get our kids on the field. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Danger. Joe Knopp? Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My son would love to play lacrosse at Batavia, and my son also right now enjoys being on the JV golf team and in the marching band. But it was quite an ordeal to to be able to do both fall events, participate in more than one extracurricular activity. In the spring, when we went to the new parent, my son's a freshman at the high school, we went to the new parent meeting for the marching band, and the question we asked, can my son be in a fall sport? Overwhelming response was yes. When my son missed 2 days of band camp to attend the golf tryouts, we were questioned as to why he was missing band camp. He can't do that. The same day, on the marching band website, is the policy that we were giving last spring was still there at the beginning of the year. I'm on the phone with people telling me you can't do both while I'm reading the marching band website that says, yes, you can. There's a disconnect between extracurricular activities. I'm not sure if it's only music and sports, but I'd like to understand and have somebody take a look, where does the school draw the line at what extracurricular activities a student can participate in and when? If my son at 15 can't learn how to juggle his responsibilities and select his own activities, he's going to be stuck trying to learn it at 50. Is he allowed to be on student council and in the marching band? Can somebody be in cross country and in the marching band? What about Key Club and marching band? It seems what I'm hearing, and I heard Mrs. Swift mentioning it earlier, something to do with the band. I've talked to several different people at the high school. We've got our issue resolved this year, but I know we're not the only people that want to do more than one thing at a time with our kid. Why does the school set a policy telling me that I can't manage my son's activities, that they'll set the policy and do it for me? Thank you.
Thank you. John Robinson?
Good evening,
Good evening.
and thanks for allowing me to speak. Thanks to the Board of Education and the admin. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the high school athletic field study. And just for the record, it's not just a football field study like it's been written about in papers. It benefits all students, benefits all parents, benefits all spectators. And it addresses several areas, and I'd like to go through them all. First is a safety issue. I was at a track meet several years ago where a girl was throwing the shot put in a meet, and a baseball player hit a home run over the fence. And it hit her right in the head, and she had to go to the hospital. Our fields are too close. We know that. We need fencing. We need a lot of work on our fields. It addresses a comfort issue. Anybody who goes to our fields and watches just about any event, it's not a comfortable place to sit and get around, especially when there's a huge crowd for a big event. It provides a lot of opportunities for the district as far as more extracurricular activities for the students, but it also provides additional revenue in the form of concessions and rentals of the property. And one of the most important things is that it provides an opportunity to provide better maintenance of the fields. Right now, the fields are overused terribly, and it's amazing how the ground staff today can keep those fields up and running as much as they're used. Kudos to them. Lastly, I'd like to take a look at some statistics. I took a trip down memory lane. I'm a grad of Batavia in 1982. And so I got out my yearbook, and with the help of the yearbook and Dave Andrews, I was able to get some interesting stats. So let's go back to 1982, when Batavia had 690 students. We had 14 sports, and all those 14 sports, we had 27 different levels, whether it's JV or sophomore or freshman. And 375 participants. Wow, that's a small school. Today, we have nearly 2,000 students, 1,975. We boast 21 sports, which is a 50% increase, but 60 levels. That's over 2 times the amount of sports levels that we offered just back in 1982. And we have 1,086 participants this year in our extracurriculars. That doesn't even count I was also in the band and played sports. The band's huge now, and we have a flag program, flag team, and if you think about the amount of people we put on that every day, think about what it was like in 1882 till today, we have probably 25% less land. Think about it, Greg, you were here. We had football field practice where the BFAC is and where the retention pond is. Those were the high school football practice fields. And the girls softball fields, both freshman, soft, and the varsity, were about where you walk into the field in the concessions.
So
I'm
March
sorry.
1st, we're at 3 minutes.
So I strongly urge the district to continue looking at ways to provide better opportunities and better field and athletics for our students and our citizens, and to have Batavians keep an open mind about how we do this. And this is a journey, and I think together with a lot of people trying to help raise money, we can see this thing through. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'd now like to move on to our partners in education. Is there anyone from Batavia here tonight? Okay, then we'd like to invite Tony Millay, President of the BEA, to address the board.
Thank you, Katie. I was just with Joe Fricaro from VESPA, and he was not going to make it tonight, so where we were at was with our local legislators. We've started actually last year with Howard Miller got it going. The Region 40 is made up of Batavia, Geneva, and West Aurora. And the association leaders from those meet regularly with our local legislators on education issues. So tonight we met with Senator Oberweis, Senator Holmes, and Representative Fortner. Normally Linda Chapelivia is there, and I'm missing one other. Anyway, I just want to let you know that we were having ongoing discussions about all issues education. The next thing I'd like to share with you, and I thought I had 7 copies, I have to grab another one, but there is a campaign, a coalition running a campaign called the Better Illinois, which is made up of small businesses, healthcare providers, the IEA is involved, other community groups in getting our legislator to put in on the ballot a vote to be able to change the Constitution to allow for a fair tax. So I just wanted to share information with that, and I'll leave these flyers with you. You can go to betterillinois.com to find out more about it for your information, and I'll surely be bringing back some more information on that in the future. And the last thing I have is, the last meeting I talked about, we had a very smooth start to the year, and we have. Now that the rubber has hit the road, we've been hearing from a number of our members with a number of concerns, and so what we decided to do was to start listening, and so we've been having listening forums. We've had a couple on the west side, or a couple on the east side, a couple on the west side, another one to do, and we've just been listening, getting feedback from our members, and we will be sharing that, what we find, having our ear to the tracks, so to say. We will be sharing that with administration and with the board. So you can expect to be hearing what we hear from our members in the coming meeting. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Grimscheid, could you please come forward and tell us about our celebration of successes tonight?
All right. I wanted to bring Mrs. Woods, one of our teachers, up to speak about our first item. Actually, I'll turn the floor over to her.
That was amazing. Hello, my name is Andrea Woods. I'm a second grade teacher at Hoover Wood. And when Mrs. Cooley, I apologize, I said it wrong, approached me on coming to speak to you with our idea of bringing the summer reading program at the Batavia Public Library to the Batavia Apartments, I initially said, yeah, I can come and do that. That'd be great. And then no less than a minute later, I was in my colleague, Mrs. Hemis's room saying, I don't think I can do that. She says, well, why? And I said, well, I don't think it's a good reason why I did it. I don't know if it's a good story. And she looked at me and said, well, just tell the truth, because most times the truth is the better story anyway. So the truth is, I had met a very, very special boy at the beginning of the school year last year. Came into my room, a little 7-year-old, so emotionally troubled and sad and cried every single day. And I had to dig through all of that before he was really available to learn. And once we did that, and it was such a success in itself, he was reading well, but then it was March, April, and I just wasn't ready to let him go. And I knew I wanted to keep my thumb on him, and I knew I wanted to keep teaching him. And I remember having the Batavia Public Library at our school, and they would come every year and they would invite the kids to the LRC, and they would ask for a show of hands, or they would ask the kids to stand who were always involved in the Batavia Public Library summer reading program. Almost 90% stood up, and it was always the same kids who weren't standing or didn't participate, and the majority of those kids were from the Batavia Apartments. I'm so proud of Hooverwood and how well we do to reach out to the Batavia Apartments, be it our awesome kindergarten teachers who do kindergarten preview, or just the numerous teachers who knock on doors to say, why weren't you at school today? Or our awesome principal who will knock on the door and say, we need you tomorrow, buddy. And having parent-teacher conferences in their resource center. So I just thought, well, why couldn't we do that with the Batavia Public Library? So I approached Allison in the juvenile department. She was completely on board. She showed up every Thursday with logbooks and prizes for the kids. And even better, the kids were there on their summer break at 9 o'clock on blankets, reading, sometimes 7, 8 teachers from our district were listening to kids read. That's the real reason, the science, the brains behind it. I will let our awesome reading specialist, Elaine Modine, talk to you about the benefits of it, but that's where it came from, so thank you.
Oh, that is so funny. So just 3 pieces of research. I have it on my phone here just in case I forget. 3 pieces of research that shows that students lose their learning in the summer. So students from middle-class homes lose very little of their learning during the summer. Students from low-income families actually reverse their learning during the summer. Research for summer school is not as effective as the research that just supports reading. If you just read, that will maintain or raise your learning. So what the teachers at Hooverwood School, and like what Andrea said, there were always at least 7 teachers there every time. If we can read to, with, and then listen to students read, will actually help the students to avoid that literacy vacation. And the last research is that if children feel safe and if they're happy, then they'll retain their learning. And as you can see, all the kids were safe, all the kids were happy, and props to all of the teachers who did this because they really educated their brains and their hearts. Thank you.
All right, next I wanted to introduce our watchdogs from Hooverwood, Mr. Nanowski, Mr. Lowe, and Mr. Ringel. Want to come on up?
Thanks, Lou. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, we're good.
Good. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. I do a fair amount of public speaking, but not nearly as much as Matt Lauer does. So I'm gonna let Matt talk for a few minutes. We'll cut this off about halfway through. Who's controlling? Okay. We'll let you know. Thank you.
Involvement, something important to both of us here. I've got 3 kids. I understand how hard it can be for some dads to take the time to be a father. We're going to show you that PSA in a moment, but first, a look at some very special dads. So you only did that in kindergarten?
Yeah. After school, I'm gonna play with you.
Oh, Mike Zimmerman didn't clock in at the car wash this morning. Rain, rain, rain. Jake Endrick won't be handling any IT issues today either.
Me is not okay.
A is okay.
You like the A++.
And corrections officer Lander Wally is spending his day correcting spelling. Instead of their regular jobs, these guys are hard at work at the business of being dads. Back to school for a lesson in what it feels like to be a kid again. Raise your hand if you're a great father. All right, raise your hand if you've always been a great father. Go ahead. Why? Why, yeah?
Things get away from you. Children grow up, your job, you're the wallet, you're the chauffeur, you're the go-to guy, but mom gets all the information, you know.
These dads from Berkeley County, West Virginia are all part of a national program called Watchdogs. To participate, they simply volunteer to help out in their children's schools.
Good job, guys.
My dad's kind of funny. He takes us bowling. If I tell him a story, he always listens and knows what to say.
If you have something to say and need somebody to talk to,
My dad.
all of your dads come to school every once in a while, right? Tell me why it's a good thing.
You're bonding together more.
I think we've become like better friends. Like he knows more about me and like how I do at school. Well, he's not as grumpy as he used to be.
At what age do you think your kids might stop thinking this is cool?
My 10-year-old, he's ecstatic when I show up in school. He's like, this is my dad, this is my dad. I'm like, Mom, they're gonna know I'm your dad, believe me.
Mine is going to 6th grade next year, and he wants me to go with him. I mean, he just tickled to death. I mean, yeah, it's crazy.
My son, he was ecstatic, and I get a better look at how my son is reacting in school, and he loves every time I go
So
there.
what have you learned about your son that you didn't know before doing this?
That he's a ladies' boy. He loves a girl, but he hides it from his mom.
Why do we need this? Number one, study after study have demonstrated that a child that has a positive adult male role model actively engaged in his or her life is twice as likely to graduate high school as a child that doesn't, and is going to develop more fully socially, mentally, physically, academically. So dads matter. Dads make a huge difference, especially when they take time. That's right. You know what's interesting? When you started talking about spending time in this school, you all started smiling. That's unusual for dads to be able to do, isn't it?
Yeah, that just shows how easy it is too. Sign up and make everything better.
When I go back to New York, I'm going to do a commercial. It's called a public service announcement about fatherhood. Who can explain to me what they think other dads could learn from your dad?
He's shoving his time, his free time out of the way, and his work out of the way, and he's coming to my school to be with me. It makes me feel good.
It makes me feel like super awesome that they go out of their way just to hang out with their kids. Look at that.
You mentioned your daughter, Lauren, right?
Yeah.
And you may be surprised with something Lauren told us. Lauren said that before this program, quote, I didn't think he loved me a lot.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And now I do. Wow. It must feel good to hear her say that.
I do. I love my daughter with all my heart.
What's your definition of fatherhood now?
Being there. It doesn't take money. It doesn't take things. You can walk out in your backyard and go swing, go shoot some basketball, wrestle. You see what little time that you're in the school, how much it lights them up. You get hungry for more, and you want more of that.
You guys look like you're all dressed up and ready to go. Inspired by the dads in West Virginia.
Perfect. What they show from here is just the making of the PSA that Matt Lauer did, so we'll kind of cut from there. But thank you for letting us come in and at least tell you about the program, the success we've had at Hoover Wood. I've got to thank Lou. I'll give him props right now because I took this idea to him last December, I think, and he bought into it, which I was very happy that he did. And he really was instrumental in getting this pushed through. So Lou and everybody and the staff at Hoover Wood. As the video says, the Watchdogs program it's a father involvement program. And so the goal is to get dads actively involved in the school. Typically, as I'm sure everybody here is aware, moms are the ones that are usually present in the school historically, and dads, for whatever reason, just haven't been. I can remember when I was very young, like maybe one or two times that my dad was in the school when I was in grade school. I heard about this program. I learned about it about a year and a half ago from a website called fathers.com, and I thought it was a great idea. At the time, I didn't have the time or the energy to try to actively pursue it. I found myself with that time last year, fortunately, and so I approached Lou about it. My reasons, quite honestly, for doing it were pretty selfish. I won't lie. I have 3 boys. At the time, I was a single dad, and I wanted to find a way to spend more time with my kids, as well as I do have one son who has some special needs, and I had concerns about what would happen to him as he progressed through school. And one of the things, the statistics that has been proven is when there is an additional positive male role model in the school environment, the amount of bullying drastically decreases. So the goals of the program really are twofold. One is, as they talked about on the video, is to get active male role models to be involved in the daily environment at the school. And the second really is an added layer of security, because statistics have also shown that when there is an additional male presence in a school environment, that the amount of bullying not only decreases, but the amount of violence decreases, the level of the learning increases, and various things like that. I don't know all the statistics off the top of my head, so I apologize. But Jeff did a really good job putting this binder together. On page 11 of this binder, there's some great statistics you can look at, and these are really from surveys that were conducted and the results that were shown. So just 79% of the respondents said that there was an added significant contribution to the safety of the school. They saw, I think this was a really big one in my opinion, that they said that 79% said that they had seen an increase in father involvement outside the Watchdogs program. So, you know, at Hoover Wood, I think we see a fairly decent amount of fathers that are involved after school, but overall, I don't know what that average number is. So to say 79% saw a huge increase outside of the Watchdogs program, I think is significant. At Hoover Wood, I know that 1/3 of the households are also single-parent households. So, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine that a majority of those are going to be from fatherless homes. I know that, as I said, my reasons for initially wanting to get this program off the ground were very selfish. What I found was, as I went in, and I think I spent 5 days at the school last spring, is it was great. You become a rock star in the school. It's kind of cool. All the kids, you wear these T-shirts that Jeff and Chris wore. Sorry I left mine on the kitchen counter. I would have had it on, I promise you. But you become a rock star. The kids love you. You come in, you spend a day. You start off just monitoring and helping with the traffic as the traffic flow comes in. You come in at 9 o'clock, you do the Pledge of Allegiance, your kids come down, they announce the watchdog of the day, and then you spend the day in the school. You monitor the hallways, and when you get there in the morning, Lou sits you down, or somebody in his administration, they go through the rules and guidelines. You get your schedule for the day. I've got 3 boys, or I did have 3 boys at Hoover Wood, so I would get to spend, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, 15 minutes in each one of their classrooms. I would monitor the hallways. I would eat lunch with them. I'd go on a recess with them. I'd always get picked to be the designated quarterback or the all-time quarterback, which was fun. As Steve can attest, I don't have a very good arm, so that was pretty interesting. But anyhow, that's really what your day consists of. It's just spending time. You maybe when you're in the classroom, you're reading, you're doing flashcards, all different types of things. So what I will tell you is one, my kids loved it. Okay, so my youngest, who's still there, wants to know when I'm coming back. Dad, what days are you coming in to volunteer? Which I think is tremendous, and that's been probably our biggest advertising within the school, has just been kids going home and asking their dads to come and take part. I can tell you the dads that have been involved, and Chris and Jeff are 2 of them, have loved the program. I mean, I've gotten emails from people saying, hey, I had a great day today. It was amazing. I got to see. You get to see into your kids' lives, as it said in the video, in ways you don't hear about at home. So now it's no longer at the dinner table, like, what did you do today at school, or what did you learn? I can ask specific questions because I know. I got to witness what they were doing. I think, though, the part that really impacted me in a way that I was not expecting ties back into what Mrs. Woods was talking about and their reading program at the apartments. Being that I was in my son's, each of their classrooms on multiple occasions, I was able to be exposed to certain kids within the classroom, and this obviously was not my intent when I tried to get the program launched. But I saw certain kids that were very inside of their shell when we first came in. As I went back into the school and they became accustomed to having somebody else there, you could kind of see them opening up. And they, initially when I saw that, I tried reaching out to them and kind of helping out, and they were very standoffish, they didn't want it, but as I came back, you could see them opening up, you could see them craving that additional male presence, and I can only assume that they're coming from an environment where that's not there. So again, that wasn't my main purpose, but it's really been an added benefit. And I know in talking to Kristen and Jeff and with other dads that have been involved with the program, they've experienced some of those things as well. So I'm going to let Chris tell you a little bit more about what we're trying to do. My goal initially when I launched this was to get this into Hooverwood last year and get it into Rotolo this year because I have 2 6th graders there now. I had an initial meeting last spring. I've got another follow-up meeting with Mark Anderson and the 6th grade coordinator Friday morning, hoping to get that implemented sometime this year. That's my goal into 6th grade. If we get it going in 6th grade and it works well, then it's to move it to 7th and then to 8th. My goal was also in 2014 to have it into all the other elementary schools in Batavia, and we're kind of working towards that. So Chris and Jeff have stepped up. When I asked I wanted to back out of the Hooverwood, we call it the top dog role. It's kind of funny, but so it's got the top dog role. They volunteered to step up. They've taken it from me and run with it and done an amazing job, much better than I did last year. But Chris has got some initiatives going where he's trying to get this moved over and shipped under the PTO umbrella, so I'm going to let him tell you about that.
Hello, thank you for letting us present tonight. My name is Chris Lowe. I am a stay-at-home dad, so for me, it's kind of different because I see my kids all the time. They've seen a lot of me, but what is important to me, or what really makes this program special, is exactly what Tim was talking about. The other kids that you know just crave having a positive male role model. When I go to the school, I have kids, I sat down at lunch, and I have kids who have seen me before and know that I'm there, and they come down and they sit down right next to me and literally have to be touching me so that they can spend that time. I've had kids who were spending time in a quiet room and they heard my voice out in the hall and came running out of the hall and gave me a big hug just because they heard my voice. It's just an amazing feeling, both of elation and sadness that it's necessary. But what I'm hoping to do, I'm also the president-elect of the PTO. And I've spoken with one of our co-presidents about moving the Watchdog program underneath the PTO so that the budgeting all would fall underneath that category. I think that is a no-brainer as far as organizing the Watchdog program. I also think it's easier for budgeting and kind of takes, it will take a lot of the responsibility off of Blue and the administrators, as well as any other schools that decide to implement the program. I think it is something that we could really benefit our community if we could get this implemented across all schools. My kids are very active in sports. We know kids from other schools. I've had parents come up to me saying, how can we get this started at our school? So that's why we're coming to you. You guys can relay the information to other principals of other schools. They can find out if there's an interest, and then they can reach out to us and we can help them get the program started. So that is pretty much it. I did have the opportunity to have Mr. Gaspar join me for a day at Hooverwood as a watchdog. I think he saw the benefits of the program. I think he realizes what a positive influence it can be, and you know, we've made the paper. It's another way that we can actually put Batavia on the map locally, and you know, people can hear about the wonderful things that we're doing.
I was tired after that day.
It is tiring. It wears you out.
And I taught for 33 years. I was dead tired when I got home. Definitely wears you out. But it was very beneficial, helping the kids.
Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. So we appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Any questions about the program? No?
Can you be a watchdog at different schools if you have a child at like Rotolo and a child at, you know, a grade school, or?
Absolutely.
It is based at each school has their own program. So provided that the school actually has the program there and the administration is supporting it, then absolutely. I see no reason why that can't happen. The other thing about getting it working at the higher levels, like the middle school level, I think if we get it at all the elementary schools, the downside that kids may face by having their parents come in middle school, I think goes away if the kids are used to seeing the watchdogs there their entire school career. And you know, that gives the opportunity to cut down on the bullying. It's amazing how the kids, a grade may be banned from playing football, but then when we're there, we can play football with them and there's no issues. When we're not there, they're tackling, they're picking on the weak kid, and that stops. We make a difference, and it's wonderful.
I know, and I did ask a lot of questions with Chris and Lou about, how many dads come in during the day, or can you have more than one, and they go to different classes. But the day we went in, Chris was working on a student with language arts stuff, and I was working with a kid with math stuff. And then we went someplace else and we helped out in gym, and then we did lunch duty, and then we did recess, and then they have a packed day. It's but the kids came up to Chris, and they even came. First question: who's your son or daughter? Mine's at the high school. Why are you here? I want to help. But they accepted me, and so that was. It was fun, and I hope it can go. And I know we have principals from the other grade schools, and anything to promote it. I think it's a good cause to, anything that benefits the kids and to help them.
If I can, real quickly, just to answer what may be going through a few of your heads. I know if I was in your seats, I would be thinking this. What does it take to get it started? It's really very simple. It took more time than effort, to be quite honest with you, just kind of getting through some red tape. What you would do, what I did last year, is you need one individual, or in this case, Chris and Jeff decided to do it together this year, and that's fine. You need one or two individuals to lead it and say, I want to be what we call, again, the top dog, to get this kicked off. And so you work with the administration at the school. I worked with Lou last year. He then gets it approved. He goes to his faculty and says, is this something that you would be on board with? And when he got approval with that, then he went to the next level, which he can tell you, I don't remember what it was, but he had to get approval from there. Then it was a matter of funding, which quite honestly, we've had enough people show interest that funding is not going to be an issue whatsoever. I guarantee we're probably going to have more than we know what to do with, because people have seen the value of it. At that point in time, what we do is you just simply set up, we found an online website that can do all the scheduling. It costs $5 a month after the first year. The first year's free, then it's $5 a month. And you're able to go online, you set up the days that you need people to be there, you need dads to be there, the dads log in, all they do, and the thought is we put a link on the Hooverwood site, but what would be great is if we could get like a watchdog kind of banner on every single grade school site, and all the dads do is click on that, it takes them right to the volunteer site to sign up. They enter in their email information, they pick the day they want, they put their students' names in. 5 days, I think, or 3 days before they come in to volunteer, they get a reminder email, this is your day. The Thursday before, each week, one person who's been assigned at the school as kind of the administrator of the program gets an email saying, these are your watchdogs for next week, here are the students that they have, so this is the classrooms that they'll be in. That way they can notify the teachers, you're going to have a watchdog in your class this day from such and such a time. At that point, it really kind of goes on autopilot. Each day the dads come in, they go through a very brief orientation. They have to sign off on some waivers saying we understand the rules, we understand the procedures. They're given a walkie-talkie to carry around with them, which they all think is pretty cool. And then it goes from there. What we do at the beginning of the year, which we did this year, we didn't do last year, we did this year though, is we had a big pizza party, invite kids and the dads in, have pizza. They go out. Actually, we did it the opposite way this year just because of timing. But yeah. We had a presentation for the dads. The kids are playing in the gymnasium. Then the kids come back in and everybody has a big pizza party, and that's how we kind of recruit the dads. So that's, from an administrative standpoint, that's really about it. And I guess Lou could probably answer the questions on his end as to what the burden was in the school and at the administrative level. So.
And to give you an idea about the interest, is last year I believe we started it in April.
April 1.
Yeah, we started in April, and we had 24 parents volunteer, and we had, I believe, we had over 100 people. We had 100 people at the open gym that showed up, and I believe half of those were the parents. So there's definitely the interest there, and it's getting better and better.
I have a question. What's the difference between what you do at the elementary schools versus the middle school program?
It would be exactly the same. Yes, it's not implemented at the middle school yet, so my hope is that we can get it implemented this year.
Is there like a national
yes,
guidelines you follow?
I apologize. I think it was founded, 1998? So at this point, it's in roughly 2,900 schools across the country.
47 states.
47 states, 2,900 schools. So yes, there are guidelines that you follow. They provide you, it's kind of idiot-proof. I mean, it really is. I mean, they made it easy for us, and you follow those guidelines, you get it implemented, it's pretty simple. So, but yes, the same guidelines are followed in middle school. The only thing that's different is going to be the schedule, because the schedules are different.
Tougher questions by heart.
Yeah.
And
math gets a little more difficult, I'm afraid.
And because it's a national organization, the support is there. If you run into snags, somebody else has run into this problem before. They have a Facebook page. You can post the problem there. You can call. They'll answer your question. So they're really there to support the program.
Jason can start the JB Nelson one.
I just wrote dog in training. So.
I've got dads, as Chris said, just because through sports, I know a lot of dads at all the grade schools. I've got dads at every grade school that are asking me, that want to be a part of it already. So I don't think getting dads involved in helping get it started will ever be an issue. So.
And I think all three of us here feel strongly, so if another school wants to do this, we have no problem, mentoring that school and bringing it up.
Great. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6 is our consent agenda. The consent agenda is a method of streamlining our meetings by taking one vote on a number of routine business and personnel items. And each of the items is detailed in the agenda and has been appropriately placed in the board packet. Mr. Pierce, could you please read the consent agenda?
I'd be happy to. All right, 6.1 is the approval of minutes. During the months of September and August, we had special meetings, regular meeting, and some closed sessions, so that's that approval. 6.2 is personnel. First of all, 6.21, the employment of classified Tina Cahill, all the way down to our lunch supervisors. And moving on to the next page, we have 6.22, which is a promotion of technology employee from summer seasonal to a specialist position. 6.23 is an increase in a contract for a certified staff member. And then lastly, under this, 6.24, we have a request for a leave of absence with one of our employees. Moving on to our routine financial items, 6.3. 6.31, we are recommending the board approves the payroll as presented. 6.32 is a complete listing of the bills for the board approval that has been compiled for your review. 6.4, we are on to our treasurer's reports. You can read the treasurer reports that need to be approved. Moving on to the next page, we are at 6.5, approving donations. We'd like to recommend that the board approves a generous donation from Target of just about $2,500 to Rotolo Middle School. And then 6.6, we have our FOIA requests. You can read the 4 requests that we received since our last meeting. 6.7, disposal of surplus district property. 6.8, this is probably my favorite one, and Brad mentioned this to me as his favorite. We have the BHS overnight field trip. We would like the board to approve the fishing team participating in that trip in April. 6.9, IMRF resolution for board action. We're recommending the Board of Ed adopt the resolution allowing IMRF to consider insurance premiums paid by employees as their earnings. 6.10, application for recognition of schools. We recommend that the board approves this. We have several policy revisions that we are recommending the board adopt. 6.11.1, board member development. 6.11.2, guidance and counseling program. And then finally, 6.113, we have student records, which is something that was suggested to us by the people who keep an eye on school policy for us. 6.12, we're moving on to our administrative goals. We recommend the board approves the appendices to the contracts of Superintendent Hitchens and Tony, Chris, Brad, and myself. And then we have 6.13, annual compensation report. We recommend the board approves that report as it's presented. That will, it's required by our state to go up on our website soon. And then finally, 6.14, we're going to be asking the board to approve the video conferencing equipment that you can read about there. So with that, that is the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Are there any items on the consent agenda for removal or for clarification?
Do you
see that typo on the date as well. The 6.13 under the first page of the consent agenda says special meeting minutes of September 10th, 2014. I'm sure it's just a typo since we don't have a time machine at our disposal.
Where is that?
On the very first page.
On the front page, it says 2014. When you get into the detailed consent agenda, it says 2013.
Okay.
So-
Yeah.
So we're just approving the agenda, not the actual
And
point
Lisa,
itself.
on your goals, did we leave that one where you collect the data?
Yes, we had a conversation about that. Sue called and had a question about one of the indicators.
Yes,
right?
the indicators.
One of the indicators.
Collect
And
data.
The indicators
Are we
were.
gonna leave it as that?
Yes, because they are a work in progress. The indicators are things that you might see. And so Sue wanted to say that it's not just having a focus group, it's bringing back the data and using the data.
Oh, right, that makes sense. Okay, it just seems a little.
That's fine.
So yeah, definitely a work in progress. It says that those are some examples of things that I would show that I'm working towards those goals. And so, yes.
I mean, it's not the actual goal, so.
Right. And
I'm
you
fine
can
with
see
it.
other things too.
Right, I'm fine with it because it's not an actual goal.
Right,
Does that
okay.
make sense?
Yep.
It just, it was a little.
A little vague.
Yeah, well, it was just kind of like, I'm gonna
We're just
collect
gonna
data.
focus group, that's right.
I'm gonna collect the data. And I'm
How
just
Sue
gonna look at
Sue
it.
said, what are you going to do with that information?
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah,
just a little-
it'll be.
Can I, a question or a concern I have on one, or is this? Okay.
This is the done.
Okay, just want to make sure. On the policy 6.11.2 on the guidance and counseling program, I just want to make sure that this is the first reading, but I want to make sure that our counselors, with the BEA and so on, get together with Brad. So there's collaboration on putting this all together, because this is to benefit our students, to make sure we're all on the same page. Since we are changing a little bit, I want to make sure that there is that input. So I want to make sure there's no time frame per se. So I just want to make sure there's this understanding. And we talked a little bit about it in policy meeting.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that other people are aware of it, that, weren't there or anything. So I just want to make sure that there's going to be another open communication and so on.
So our understanding is that this is a framework
Yes.
that then will allow you guys to do your work to figure out how to move us in the direction we need to serve our students, correct?
Okay, thank you. Oh, on the donation from Target, that was to the middle school, wasn't it? Is that from the red card? Yes. Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, all right, that's good then.
Why does that have to be approved by the board?
We have to approve all donations.
All donations approved. I was just wondering if that was where it came from, so,
Okay.
thank you.
That is weird.
Any other questions? Any other items for clarification?
I think all the others were answered by Brad the other day.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved by Locke.
Second.
Second by Stoops. Kathy, would you call the roll?
Blakely.
Yes.
Gaspar.
Yes.
Hodge.
Yes.
Impastato.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Stoops.
Yes.
Penhall.
Yes. Motion passes. We have two items under action, for action under item 7 tonight. Could I have Dr. Mon present the recommendation for the 2013-14 budget?
Yes, thank you. So this concludes a month-long process of bringing you first a tentative budget in July, a multi-month process, not just one. We did then publish that budget on our website. We also posted tonight's date and time of the public hearing. But then we also held a very detailed budget workshop early in August where the board got to see into a lot of the more minutia of what goes into these summary documents that we talked about at this meeting. So we talked a lot about what makes up all of the staffing and where the staff is dispersed throughout our district, what we have in each of the different functions, be it elementary instruction or middle school, special education, and all of that. Tonight, what I have before you, at least in this summary document, is just showing where some of the major changes have occurred since you put the budget on display back in July. If I could have you go to page 2. Here is our operating summary by object. Again, the operating funds consist of the education fund, the operations and maintenance fund, transportation fund, the municipal retirement fund, and working cash. Those are the 5 funds that really we look to determine surplus and/or deficit. There are 2 other non-operating funds in capital projects and debt service. In our operating funds, on the revenue side, we've made no changes to property taxes. Our assumptions are still holding as we get final EAVs from the county going into the fall. And we'll update you if anything changes from our assumptions once we get final numbers. Other local, we've been able to make some adjustments as registration fees have become final, and we get better ideas of participation fees for all of our activities. General state aid did go up. You saw that at the budget workshop, but it is a change from what we initially published. Other state revenue, the decrease is mostly in the area of regular transportation reimbursement. Just last week, we learned that the proration for regular transportation went down to 73% of the allowable cost, so that did drop the regular transportation. We saw slight increases in our special education reimbursements that offset some of that, but overall, the other state revenues, aside from general state aid, did drop. And we did get notification that some of our No Child Left Behind entitlements had increased over what we had in the tentative budget. On the expenditure side, salaries and benefits now reflect the actual payroll that was paid on September 15th. We pulled in the most recent data last week. So we have the most updated staffing that we could have provided in this document. We did see some shifting between services and supplies. Most recently today, I did update the resale accounts, which is our school store, to make sure that those are money in equals money out. Capitalized equipment represents a transfer of some expense into the capital projects fund. Our goal is to completely expend the reserves in the capital projects fund now that the referendum projects are completely finished throughout our district. And then termination benefits is the other large change since July. We did realize we needed to include budgets for some of the year of service payouts from our collective bargaining agreement that happens in January, but they were not represented in the July draft of the budget. So overall, we still are projecting a slight surplus in the operating funds, $367,811.98. That is down slightly from where we were at in July. The remaining unknowns that are still out there are what is the final new construction number that we will be able to claim property taxes on. So that could increase property taxes or decrease if it's below our assumptions. And then we may see some more shifts in other local. These are estimates on participation fees and lunch sales and all of that. If we get information that leads us to believe that registration fees will be lower or participation will be lower, we'll make those adjustments throughout the year. If we can go back to the front page now. So in that document it says individual fund breakdowns, but looking at the overall budget, our total revenues should be just over just under $81.2 million, offset by $80.8 million of expenses for an overall surplus of $365,470 when you combine both operating and non-operating. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, but we've gotten into a lot of the detail, and the Finance Committee reviewed this one last time today. After the questions are done, I would ask for your approval as presented. When that vote is taken, there is a document in the signature file that each board member needs to sign the cover page of the official budget form on whether you voted yay or nay on the budget. So I have 2 copies of that. One we'll file with the county clerk, one we'll keep here in our office.
I have a question.
Yes.
And this could be because I'm new. So if
it's complicated, we ask the same question.
Elementary, I apologize ahead of time. The capital project funds?
Yes.
Is there like an actual list of projects? Or does that change throughout the year, or as things have to be done? Or is there like, things come off, is there like a projection and then things come off the list and on the list?
The answer's a little of everything there. We do have a capital improvement plan that comes to the board in January. And then throughout February and March is when we brought the capital plan for this budget year that was approved by the board and allowed us to start making the capital expenditures plan. However, this year, that is all budgeted out of the Operations and Maintenance Fund, because the Capital Projects Fund we used for the referendum projects. So when we sold bonds for the referendum, for the field house, auditorium, and the other projects throughout the district, we deposited the money in that fund, and over years, we slowly spent that down. We're projecting that we should have a fund balance of about $200,000 remaining in that fund. And so this budget would basically eliminate all remaining funds there, so we can say that those funds are entirely depleted, and we can write that off of the books. The rest of the projects that were approved by the board back in February and March are in the Operations and Maintenance Fund. And yes, we have an outline. We talked about it today at Finance Committee, so we can make sure we forward you that document. But these are the list of projects that the board wanted to see done this year based on our 1.1 million. And then there's some other contingency items that we realized we needed to move into that plan with any of the when any of the bids didn't come in quite up to budget. We had a little bit of surplus left, so Director of Buildings and Grounds, Pat Brown, showed the board the other things that he planned to do with that money today.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions?
Forwards and backwards.
All right, then do I have a motion to approve the adoption of the budget?
So moved.
Moved by Stoop, second by Gaspar. Kit, would you call the roll?
Blakely? Yes. Gaspar?
Yes.
Hodge?
Yes.
Impastato?
Yes.
Mock?
Yes.
Stoops?
Yes.
Dremel?
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you. And I apologize, there are actually 3 items.
Thank you, Chris.
Action instead of just 2. So, Dr. Newkirk, could you please present the recommendations of the Online Blended Learning Consortium?
Sure. I'm here tonight to ask your approval of an intergovernmental agreement authorizing Batavia to join an online and blended learning consortium with 5 other districts. Last spring, Batavia, along with 18 other districts, was approached by a virtual charter school, and we went through that process, but the conversation didn't end after that process ended. The member districts began talking and looking at what our options were, and out of that, 5 different districts, if you go to the next slide, started to emerge as having some shared interest and shared beliefs around online learning and blended learning. Those member districts are Indian Prairie, Naperville 203, Wheaton-Warrenville 200, Caneland 302, and Batavia. And Batavia is the final of the group to present to their boards of education. So you may have seen this in other media, but each of us are taking to our boards the idea of partnering on a planning process to explore systematically what online and blended learning could look like within our districts. You can see some of the shared interests that have emerged through our discussions about this proposal, and I just want to highlight a couple of those. One is really increasing the opportunities for our students. Each of the districts that you see represented there really expressed over and over again through these discussions that we wanted to make sure we had the ability to increase our opportunities for our students to take classes and be connected in a way that they're not currently. We also looked at maintaining our students' connections to both their local schools and their local teachers. That was a big interest of ours. And then also looking for ways to systematically integrate technology into the learning process while still supporting our teachers in doing that. Those are some of the shared interests that led to further discussions and our recommendation to plan together for an online and blended learning program that could serve all 5 of our districts. The districts have continued to take a look at this, and you can see in the next slide that we have worked with Evergreen Consulting. Evergreen Consulting is one of the few companies out there that does this type of work of bringing districts together to explore and make some decisions about what a potential online and blended learning program for districts could look like. So in looking at that, you can see some of the phase 1, which is only planning, and that's what we're asking for tonight, is authorization to enter an agreement only for planning. If we choose to, we can go into a phase 2, which would be implementation, but that would be a separate intergovernmental agreement. You can see that it's not a lot of these things that we're asking to do and accomplish in phase 1 are big picture, kind of setting the vision, and making some decision points about how this might look. So that would represent some of our phase one planning. I'm just going to share with you not only that background, but some of the things that we've been talking about to kind of contextualize this agreement. One is making sure that we all understand that just because we have a lot of technology within our classrooms does not mean that we are doing blended or online learning. So technology rich does not equal blended learning. It really is a different way of looking at instruction and supporting instruction with that use of technology. So that's a little piece together example there. You can see that the title of our consortium is purposely chosen. It has two separate components to it. First is the online component. This is where you have teacher-led instruction that is delivered primarily through the web, and that learning environment is structured through some piece of software, and most often is the teacher and the student are geographically separated. That's kind of that online piece. Not only are we interested in exploring and planning for that piece, but also the blended piece, which to me is really exciting about how we start to blend technology in our traditional classrooms. So you can see that blended learning really is kind of a combination of bricks and mortar, traditional education with some of these online pieces. So you have some aspect of meaningful online delivery of content and instruction. We have a data stream that allows us to adjust time, place, the path of student learning, and the pace of student learning. And then you still have that connection, that significant supervised on-site component where you're starting to blend this learning. And depending on the developmental level of the child and where we're at in this process, that can look differently. So I'll just kind of give you an example of what the possibilities are through this process. On the left, you will see that traditional face-to-face setting. On the far right, you'll see that fully online component. But there's this huge area in the middle that we can take advantage of to improve student learning and to really open up opportunities instructionally for our teachers and for our students. In that kind of hybrid zone where they're talking about, that's where you have a rotational model. So if you were looking at a classroom that's implementing blended learning in a rotational model, which we do have some classrooms functioning in this way currently within our buildings, you would see students at some point during that instruction have a center or some other facet of online learning as a part of what they're doing with their teacher in that rotational model. So you might see a teacher, a good example of rotational in our current school system is our Read 180 class. So in that class there is several parts to it. There's whole group instruction, the teacher's working with small groups on their reading skills. There's an online component and an independent reading. And they rotate between those four centers as they do their instructional rounds for that particular day. There are other models which kind of move more to that fully online piece where students are choosing maybe some a la carte classes. We currently have an online consumer ed class that our students can opt into at the high school, but we would want to see a more full array of those a la carte options through this process to open up opportunities for our students. A classic example of this is Batavia does not offer Mandarin Chinese, but could we offer that class potentially through the consortium? Those are the questions that we're exploring to open up those opportunities for our staff. So you have that flexible model, the a la carte model, and that blended virtual model where students are doing some of their coursework maybe separated from the school environment, but still connected to their teacher in their school. So there's that middle that we're exploring as well, and I think instructionally that's really exciting opportunities for our staff, our school, and our students. So that's just a little bit of our learning so far. In terms of our next steps, we would ask that you approve the intergovernmental agreement for phase one. We would also expect in the near future to start talking about a remote learning policy. This is a required policy that we brought to the policy committee this month. We need to at some point have a remote learning policy in order to facilitate this type of learning. And then we would report back in January about the planning that was done through phase one if approved. And at this time, I would take any questions that you have. In the board document, you also saw a copy of the intergovernmental agreement through all 5 districts. As far as I know, Batavia would be the first to sign this intergovernmental agreement. As board meetings come up, more and more districts will step online with that agreement.
Brad, you gave the example of the Mandarin but so it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. It's kind of going to also be per district also?
Right.
So you can interchange?
So in our conversations thus far, the models that we've looked at allow districts to access the online and blended learning pieces that we're developing together in different ways. Each of the districts has expressed that we have different stakeholders, we have different communities, we want to make sure there's flexibility in what we're doing. But we also want to make sure that we're working together because while this is maybe more widely used, these types of learning systems are more widely used in other parts of the country. In terms of Illinois, we're still in kind of the infancy, so we thought it better to learn and grow together.
Okay, and then, you know, my pet question's always going to be, it's kind of twofold now, is because we're going to get input from our staff, right? Our teachers on some of this.
Right.
And then my second part, and I'll let you, what about the teachers and talking to the other teachers from the other districts to make sure things are collaborated in the right way? So
That's kind of my question. Who from the district is on this committee?
Really, all three of us have worked at some point on this. I guess I would be the district's lead person.
Do we have any staff on the committee, or
No.
will we put any staff on the committee?
What we're doing now is kind of exploring, and we're also talking about which stakeholders to involve in this process. So they would probably go through the planning process and have pretty specific ideas of which stakeholders need to come in as we get or want to move towards that implementation phase.
And my other question is, the one thing that jumps out at me when I look at that list of districts, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but 3 of those districts are significantly larger than this one. I don't know if you've identified any pros or cons to working with districts that are so much bigger.
Size, I mean, it's nice to have a larger number of students that you can draw from because you want to make sure that you're offering up those opportunities. So there's some benefit to working with some larger districts. But to me, it was more about what commonalities and shared interests do we have for our students.
And are we talking, I guess that's my other question, is this just like in addition to going to school, or is this like for students who will never step foot in our actual building and grounds?
It could be for both. So depending on what this looks like, again, this is all really, we've not made any decisions. There's been no decision points with this so far. We've just had preliminary conversations. That online piece, if we have students who are not able to join us but live in our district, they possibly could access that online piece. And then students who...
How does the state account for that when they're doing it?
That's what you have to determine in your remote learning policy.
So this would be like a kid, for some fortunate, gets on Broadway and is one of our students and is going to be away. It could be used or something, or the Olympics or something like that. So, or some.
That's a potential for online learning.
Brett, did this committee, did this form based on the presentation last year from the virtual learning?
I think that started the conversation.
This all started?
And what we heard from many of the board meetings that we attended and the hearings about the charter school was the desire by boards to continue to explore this. They didn't feel that that proposal was right for them, but they wanted to explore making sure that we had opportunities for our students. And if that included these online and blended pieces, they were open to exploring that. So those types of comments from our boards really led us to having increased conversation amongst the 18 districts. And as we talked, we saw some shared interest among those 5 districts.
Just out of curiosity, because I know we did talk quite a bit when we had the virtual learning presentation last year with those 18 districts. Do you know why they're not a part of this, and why are these just the districts that chose to be together with us, or are they doing something different to attack?
Do you want
to? Sure. I would say that, you know, what Brad had said was that it was based on feedback from the board. Well, you know, right. we don't really like this option, but let's look at some others so that there would be some similarities there. But I would also say that there are other districts that were part of that original online group of targeted districts that are showing interest. And really what this group is saying is, well, let the 5 districts do some planning. At some point in the future, we'll look at expanding it to other districts. But right now, the more people you have in the room, the harder it's going to be to plan something. Right. So right now, we're just in the planning phase, and they're keeping, these districts are keeping the planning part closed, but then at some point saying, all right, here's the plan, now let's see who else is interested.
I was just curious because I know when all of this came about last year, the 18 districts were all very much against it. So I just didn't know if their thoughts had changed and that's why they didn't. But now I understand.
I'm not aware of those changes. It just seemed to be, as we've talked, some people had some different interests and different ways of approaching this and exploring this option. And these 5 districts tended to group together and have those shared interests.
And we're solicited regularly about other groups asking if we're interested, not school districts, but outside entities coming in and saying, by the way, you dodged a bullet with that one, but would you be interested in, signing up with our online learning program? And so maybe some other districts are exploring some of those instead.
Okay. Thank you.
I got a couple questions, Brad. I'm sure this is going to take into account the blend between online learning and our Common Core standards that we're rolling out. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So if we look at Common Core and the things that are coming down, really one of the decision points that we may have to make as a part of this consortium is where is the content from this coming from? So are we going to build pieces of this and use our own curriculum but transfer it over to that online or blended piece? Are we purchasing pieces of this curriculum? So we have not had those in-depth conversations about how this is going to look, but all of those things all of those curriculums would need to be approved by our Board of Education, so they would need to meet those Illinois State Common Core standards.
That leads into my next question then. The geographical distance that's going to be there obviously between the educator and the educated. Will that be sourced as a third party, or would they be considered I'm just trying to think with the BEA also, is there any type of conflict of interest to have those educators for providing the online content?
There will be lots of issues that we need to work with our union partners on this process with, because we're coming from 5 different collective bargaining agreements and different ways of approaching this. So there will be lots of discussions in the future, I'm sure, about how to approach that. That's why we're looking for something that has the flexibility to meet each of the 5 districts' needs, whether that's a common bank for us to draw from, and we can make that look a number of different ways. So if you talk about online learning, that's one little sliver of this piece. The blended piece becomes more complicated. Some classrooms and some teachers might be ready to do more of a rotational model where they're using that content in that way, but we have to build towards that. This isn't something that's going to spring forth in August 2014, being in this full form. It's going to need to be a process that we probably start very slow with and build on as we go.
And then my last question, they show the breakdown of the percentage of interest, the input by district, which is weighted differently due to our enrollment, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Does that percentage of enrollment based also on your percentage of input to this process also?
No.
So it's evenly distributed amongst the 5 school districts for input?
So we have 9% of the students, but we're all working together.
So you have 20% of the voting interest per se. Good, I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Yep.
When you come back in January and give us an update, I'm thinking that's the end of phase 1 or approximately
Right, so
the end of
phase 1 would be a 4-month process from September to basically the end of December, beginning of January is kind of the timeline that we've looked at. There are specific deliverables that we're asking the consulting firm that we're working with to provide for us, including many of the communication pieces to our boards and other stakeholders that we're going to need. Phase 2 would be a longer process towards implementation, where we're talking about the technical, the operational, the policies and procedures that need to be up and ready to do any of
At
this.
that point, will you ask us to go forward with phase 2?
Yes, that would be a separate type of piece that I would bring back to you, say, this is the plan. Any district, as you saw in the agreement, can opt out and just say, we're not interested in continuing with this process as well. So we will have another decision point probably in January, February.
Well, as we went through it, and when we knew it's a reality, we're going to going into this blindly, and that's what I like about this. At least we're looking to see what are alternatives, what are some things we have to offer. And I do like the idea that there are an array of different districts, so that we can share. Yeah, we're not just going to come along with some thing of just necessarily all the teams in our conference, so to speak, so that it'll all be just kind of the same thing. We'll get some input from some real large districts, and we may see, wow, that's really more than we can bite off here, and chew. Or they may see that we have some pretty good things there, and maybe want to just take it at a smaller step. I don't know. I kind of like the idea of having an array of interests involved to see initially in the planning stage and see how it goes.
Oh, I think it's beneficial. There's just some sophisticated districts. I'm a graduate of 203.
Well, Brad shared with me that you said, was it Indian Prairie? That they're doing this, right?
Indian Prairie would be the financial agent for this, so they have done the contract with Evergreen Consulting.
Yeah. I just don't want to, for lack of a better word, because we're smaller, be bullied by bigger ones. So I just want to make sure we have even, like he did, but we have even input at the table.
I would say it's been, thus far, in our conversations, a very collaborative process.
But that's the benefit of us being able to opt out if you find that it's not continuing to be collaborative and it's not meeting our particular needs. We can opt out with a very small investment and still take the pieces that you worked on.
Yeah, I think it's a small investment for.
Exciting. We look forward to hear about that. Yeah.
Any other questions? Then do I have a motion to approve the recommendation as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Hodge, second by Stato. Kathy, would you call the roll?
Blakely?
Yes.
Gaspar?
Yes.
Hodge?
Yes.
Impastato?
Yes.
Locke?
Yes.
Stoops?
Yes.
Dremel?
Yes. Motion passes. Mr. Glacy, could you please present the recommendation for the expansion of the Chrome book pilot at RMS?
I would be happy to. So the recommendation that we're making tonight is to expand the Chromebook pilot to the entire 6th grade at Rotolo Middle School. But before we did that, we wanted to talk to you and give you a report on the status of the pilots for one-to-one at Alice Gustafson and what happened last spring at Rotolo with Team 6-5, where we had roughly 100 Chromebooks deployed for about 7 weeks in the spring. It's actually apropos that I follow Brad tonight, because many of the same issues that he discussed with you earlier are really some of the same issues that we're looking at here. And that we're looking at some innovative ways that we can integrate technology, not simply just be technology rich, because we know that we could add devices to the classroom, and it really doesn't change a whole lot fundamentally if we don't change the teaching practices and really in the culture. And there's a lot of research out there that shows that one-to-one projects that schools have embarked upon, many have failed and many have succeeded, but those that have failed have done so mostly because they didn't fundamentally change anything. They just basically digitized traditional instruction, and we don't want to repeat that mistake. And the best model to actually think through this is what's called SAMR. And that model's on the right-hand side, and the SAMR stands for each one of those levels. And it starts first with substitution, and that's really where one-to-one goes wrong, is when we're just simply digitizing perhaps our textbooks in the classroom. There might be financial incentives to that. Although these devices cost more, textbooks are really expensive. So from a financial standpoint, many times one-to-one might actually be more efficient from a financial standpoint, but they're really just substituting digital technologies for traditional. When you look at a regular lesson, you could get to something like augmentation, where in a typical lesson where you're just typing your research paper in Word, you might get to something like augmentation where you're actually using that tool to do some different things, like maybe something like spell check or thesaurus or looking up some other resources. But you can really get to the modification and redefinition levels, the transformational abilities and the potential that technology offers when you can start incorporating things like Google Apps, where students can literally interact with other students as they're writing a paper in real time. You could have 30 kids in a class writing a paper literally at the same time. I don't know that you would really want to have 30 kids writing a paper at the same time, but technologically that would be possible. And you could really get to the redefinition level, where you could start asking experts from outside the classroom, from literally from across the world, to provide feedback on the research that the students are doing in the classroom, or from student-to-student feedback, or teacher-to-student feedback. So it really isn't just digitizing things anymore. So with that in mind, we set out with our research questions that we wanted to look at how the personal device, one-to-one meeting, we're providing a device for each child in the classroom, how that affects student agency and engagement. Because in theory, if a student has the ability, the technology can really help personalize a learning experience for a child, and in theory, that would help with student engagement itself, because the content is really tailored to the students' needs. We also wanted to explore the pedagogical strategies that were available to teachers when the technology was in the classroom, because there are more tricks in the bag available to them when they have these devices in the classroom. And we also wanted to explore the difference between the traditional classroom experiences and basically extending it beyond the four walls of the classroom to 24/7 and global, at global levels. These, by the way, the quotes and the pictures are from our students in our schools and our teachers, and so that they're real quotes from our interviews with students, our focus groups after the fact. So this study really revolved around our instructional technology strategic plan that was adopted by the board about two and a half years ago. And again, it tailored to these research questions. And what we did was survey teachers in the schools in January with a survey instrument called it was funded by the Microsoft Partners in Learning Research, and it was really surveying the frequency of what they call innovative teaching practices. And so the teachers would self-report how often they use these, and with the frequency with which they use these teaching practices in their classrooms over time. And so in the first column you see the AGS pilot, and this is what was reported by the AGS school. The first row of numbers is what was reported by the school in January. The second row of numbers is what was reported by the teachers who participated in the pilot at the end of the school year. And so there's some pretty substantial increases there. And also for RMS, conducted the survey in January there too. And then the participating teachers in the pilot at the conclusion of the school year in the spring. And this is reporting the frequency that they use these teaching practices at least 1 to 3 times per month. So not really that often when you think about it, but with the pilot, it makes them much more available to them, much easier for them to actually implement in the classroom. So these are the numbers for student engagement. More quotes from our students. I like this one. Now I know I have lots of options. It seems like without technology that someone is holding you back. Empowering teachers, this really focused on collaboration with teachers, between teachers, and between students and teachers. Knowledge building, some of the strategies that teachers were using as far as teaching practices to help build knowledge for students, still what we call student-centered practices, and also technology use itself and how frequently they use technology. But just not the fact that they're using technology, but how they're using the technology. And these were some of the key data points here. In this area, some of the numbers actually went in the other direction, but we felt that it was important to report them. Again, just noting that there was only 7 weeks of time that the teachers and the students at the middle school had this available to them in the classroom. A long quote here, and this is one of my favorites. This happens to be from a teacher, and I will give you an opportunity to read that, since I know you can read.
We can thank our teachers for that.
The last area, learning environment, also some pretty significant gains there with some of these, with the frequencies that these teaching strategies were used. And again, the learning environment focuses on extending learning beyond the classroom, connecting students and teachers with peers outside of school and even experts in some cases, and also issues that relate to global awareness. So we're really pleased with the results of this pilot. It really is going well. And like I said, we can add the technology to the classrooms. That's actually the easy part. The hard part is really looking at what is available to us and not just at the substitution levels, And really what we're looking at is nothing less than a fundamental cultural shift when these devices are available to us. And the research shows that these changes don't happen overnight. At a minimum, it takes teachers 2 to 3 years to implement these strategies because it profoundly changes how they teach and even the lessons they teach. It takes a lot more time for them to prepare for these lessons because it's so completely new. And they're truly redefining what it is that how they're teaching. So our recommendation to you would really focuses around extending that pilot at the middle school, going from 100 students to 489 students, just under 500 students. One of the things that we're looking at too is we're considering a pilot at the kindergarten level. So we haven't really looked at the primary age, and Google actually approached us and invited us to participate in a beta program with one of their devices and said that they would like to partner with us to learn more about what that looks like in our schools and offer some incentives to do that. We're not asking you to approve that tonight, but that's something that we are considering looking into and we might ask you to approve in the future. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
I have a few, Tony. Just for clarification, the kids, it's theirs to use them, right? I mean, the kids that are piloting right now, so they can take it home, or it stays in the school?
Right now, it stays in the school.
Okay.
For both the iPads and then the Chromebooks. And so we're toying with the idea of letting students take them home, but that comes with some risks to loss and damage and theft and those sorts of things. And so right now, it has worked really, really well with not letting students take the devices home. But again, it gets hard to extend learning beyond the classroom when you don't.
Well, my other question was going to be, what about filters and stuff where they, make sure they don't go to places they shouldn't go and all that stuff?
So
if they're at school, it should be pretty much locked out, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if the pilot or something, we send them home, then we've got to...
Well, we've thought about that. We haven't made the decision to do that yet,
okay.
But no filter is perfect, so you can't really lock out everything. Right. First of all, just kind of a disclaimer. But yes, when you're in school, the filter is in effect. And if we ever let them go home, the filter would be in effect there too. Okay. So the very same filtering that we would use here would be in effect at home.
And just two more questions. How long, or what's the lifespan of the Chromebook? If the kids are going to use them, what are you looking at?
Well, fundamentally, the real reason why we took a serious look at the Chromebook was because of its price point. It was actually affordable. So the average cost of an iPad, completely outfitted with cover and apps and everything that we need is $600. The advantage of a Chromebook is that it's only $250.
Okay.
And so that actually makes it really gets it to that point where we could actually make this happen. What is also nice about it is that we could look at some hyper refresh cycle where the devices are replaced every 2 years rather than every 3 like we plan to with something like an iPad. So the other part is the Chromebooks, they're cheaper, they don't run as quickly, they're not as fast, but they're not as rugged. They're more prone to damage than the iPad is. So we might need to replace them sooner because they're not going to last quite as long. So there's pros and cons to each device. But we would be looking at something like 2 years with the Chromebook and 3 or more years with the iPad.
Okay. And then my last question would be is, have you gone into the schools or any of the administrators gone in to see how this has actually gone on with, on the one-on-ones and see how they've worked?
I have personally, yes. I can't speak for any others.
Okay. Well, I was just wondering, Brad, have you?
Yeah, I visited the 5th grade pilot at AGS and volunteered in that teacher's classroom and got to see kind of firsthand what that looks like, and I came away pretty blown away by the experiences that the kids were having and how natural it was as a part of the classroom. It wasn't like this big deal, it was just a really natural part of the classroom, and the teacher was very comfortable with it, the kids were, and I really felt it enhanced the lesson they were doing on writing that I observed.
John, my son was in that pilot program last year at AGS.
Okay.
And it blew me away what they were doing. And amazing. What they learned and what they did in there.
Are we moving away from the iPads and focusing more on the Chromebooks, or are we still going back and forth or evaluating the pros and cons?
we try not to, we're trying not to really test the device so much as we're testing, what the technology itself can do. Obviously, there's pros and cons to each device, and cost is a major factor. One of the things about the iPads, though, is they're really difficult to manage in what we call an enterprise environment or in a school. They work really well as a consumer device that you have at home, because you can control it and manage what apps you want on it. But in the school environment where we're trying to distribute apps, it's extremely difficult to manage. It's quite a headache. They've recently updated their operating system to what's called iOS 7, and that just came out last week. It has some features built into it that might help us. We don't know what that really will look like yet, so that might make the iPad itself more viable from a management standpoint, but the technology itself is great. Managing it is not fun. But the Chromebook is great in the school environment, because traditionally our experience from an IT standpoint at least has been we deploy the device and we don't hear back from teachers or students unless it's literally broken. So that's good. Versus an iPad, it's constant maintenance to get new apps on and then change things for different students and so forth. So, but again, we're not testing the devices as much as we are testing the potential that technology affords.
I assume these are Wi-Fi only devices? They're Wi-Fi only devices, we're not purchasing data plans for these things?
Right, no, these are Wi-Fi only. They don't have data plans.
Any other questions?
Will there be teacher support, like training given to the teachers?
Yeah, obviously that's a critical component because, again, as I said, it's not so much about doing things as we always have. It's taking advantage of new ways of doing things, and so support is critical, and we do that through Angie Sutherland primarily. She's our instructional technologist, and she's literally working alongside the teachers in the classroom to help them through that process. There's also some professional development that we do, but we find that the most effective method to do that is to have another teacher literally work with them in the classroom alongside them so that they're facing the issues in real time.
Do we have 100% interest of all the sixth grade teachers to have this rolled out to every student in every classroom?
I don't know about 100% interest. I don't know that you ever get a complete consensus, but I do know that the sixth grade teachers, by and large, are interested in it. And we can talk to Steve about what his staff perceptions are on that.
Yeah, I told Tony a while ago that they're ready now. And, some of the things that team that's doing the pilot has done, along with the work that they're doing with kids, it's also increased conversation about the use of technology. Can you guys hear me? I feel like I'm positive. I guess I am. Has really increased conversation about technology and how it should be used in the classroom. And some of those quotes are from the teachers about how they would never, ever go back to teaching the way it used to be. And it used to be is really a very short time ago. And so, yeah, I think they're ready. And it wasn't that long ago where we were having a conversation with faculty about how to keep, and this is going to sound a little strange, but how to keep devices out of the classroom. And now it's going the other way about how to have them into the classroom. So Angie's been great with supplying conversations and sort of their own PLC with technology and training, and literally anytime I'm up in those classrooms, kids are using them and they're open, and it's changing the learning environment. That's really all I can say about that.
Are we following the students who had it at AGS and now have it in the sixth grade to see how much farther along they might be than?
From an academic standpoint now, but
Not
we're
necessarily,
following.
just from like their use of it and how comfortable they've gotten with it. Because now you've got a small portion of kids who are like on year 2, I would assume.
What's really interesting about that is we conducted focus group, or Angie conducted some focus groups and actually interviewed students that were in the program last year. There were some students that had iPads last year at Gustafson that are now in 6th grade at the middle school that don't have a device.
Yeah.
And there are students that were in that pilot and do have a device now. And of course, all 6th graders will. So it'd be interesting to see their perspective, not just from iPad to Chromebook, but also I didn't have a device, then I did, now I don't, but then I do again. So that we're interested in
I know
those
one.
comments too.
I've heard all about it.
They go through a safety, or how to use them, safety on the equipment and then technology of the internet and all that. There's a safety curriculum part to this, right?
Yeah, there is, and when the devices are issued, teachers talk about what you can do, what you can't do, and pretty much everything's recorded.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that they're making good decisions.
Good. Thank you.
Angie, do you have anything you want to add since you've been walking alongside our teachers and our students?
Tony said earlier that it's a process and it takes time, and I really feel like you can see that a lot at Gustafson because they've had the devices in their classroom longer, and those teachers went from being very nervous about having devices in their classroom and what are we going to do and what happens if the student does this or that, to really making some of those quotes really speak for themselves, and that they would never go back to doing things the way they have done in the past. And it's literally changed the way they teach. Their students have more opportunity for personalized learning experiences that they haven't in the past. And I think at RMS, they're just starting to see that. And they just got a little glimpse of that at the end of last year, and now they're really looking forward to the opportunity to make those same kinds of leaps that they've seen the other teachers make in the other pilots. So it's a really, I'm very fortunate to be able to work with them because it's a very rewarding process to go through with teachers and with the students.
Thanks. Any other questions? Tony, I apologize. Apparently I wasn't fully paying attention. Did you actually make the recommendation?
Did I make the recommendation?
Yes.
No, not verbally,
Okay.
but I certainly can here.
If you don't mind. And I apologize that I wasn't sure if you did or not.
Okay. Thank you. So I recommend the Board of Education approve the purchase of 389, 9 with an E at the end of it, Chromebooks, and then 15 carts from CDWG at a total cost of $126,000.
Any final questions?
126,600.
126,000, that's the number that I have here. Does it? Yeah.
So what?
I have 126,600.
Then it would be whatever my board report says.
Go with the higher.
This covers every student then?
This covers every student. It actually is, yes, it covers every student in the school. Not in the school, sixth grade.
Sixth grade. So there might be a few extras in case anybody comes in or anything?
Yeah, we'll have extras.
Okay, so want to make sure. All right.
We will need extras.
Yes. Okay.
All right.
So moved.
Moved by Gasper, second by Blakely. Kathy, could you call the roll?
Blakely? Yep. Gaspar?
Yes.
Hodge?
Yes.
Impastato? Yes. Locke?
Yes.
Stoops?
Yes.
Dremmel?
Yes. Motion passes. Okay, we'd like to move on to comments. Student ambassadors, hello.
Hello. So getting some basic stuff out of the way, picture retakes are Thursday for all the students that want their yearbook photos. 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the atrium. And then we'd also like to congratulate 5 seniors who took the PSAT last year and are commended scholars. Those are Brandon Arisman, Evan Carr, Daniel Mays, Mallory Morris, and Sam Spangler. So congrats to them.
I'm going to kick off the homecoming explanations. Both football and volleyball have their homecoming games this week. Volleyball plays Streamwood tonight, so good luck to them. And football plays West Chicago on Friday. The class themes are the seniors are the 1980s, the juniors are the 1960s, the sophomores are the 50s, and the freshmen are the 1970s. We got a few theme days this week. Yesterday was class t-shirt day. yesterday was Jersey Day, and tomorrow is Dress Like Your Theme Day on Pilot, something like this. And I'm going to hand it over to Megan for
It's so much homecoming. It's just so much homecoming. Okay, so Thursday is the color war, which is new this year, so I'm super psyched. Seniors are wearing blue, juniors are wearing green, sophomores are wearing purple, and freshmen are stuck with orange. Friday is Red and Gold Day, so Bulldog Pride. Wednesday, which happens to be tomorrow, is the homecoming parade. It will start at 5:30 at Wilson Street in Lincoln and will end at VHS, and it's super fun, so I recommend going. Friday will also be the school assembly in the gym, and the sophomore game will be at 5 versus West Chicago, and the varsity game will start at 7:30. And then Saturday is the homecoming dance in the VHS cafeteria from 8 to 11, so students, make sure you have your ID and make sure you buy your ticket, which will be on sale during lunches until Friday. It's $10 a person or $20 a couple.
So part of what we do is we have focus groups at school. We bring students together and we get their opinions, so hopefully we can share them with you guys and really know what's going on, not just from us, but from everybody. And a topic came up today where we were just like, oh man, that is a great focus group idea. And that was the issue of, athletes and music and drama. And, I have issues with that myself. I participated with the drama program and the athletic program, and it would be great if there was a solution to that. I'm not sure there is a solution to that. It's tough to budget time for everyone and make it so everyone can do everything. And maybe you just got to make a tough choice. That's life, and I'm doing that right now, and it's working out, and that's what you got to do. But we'd love to talk to some students and see how they're doing with it, and if they realize the same thing, or if they really wish there'd be a way that we could make both happen. We just want to let you know that we're going to try and get as much information as possible and bring that to you guys.
Great. And then,
Yes, good job.
thank you. And then lastly, we just want to touch on Rachel's challenge, because I know that was a big thing. And we're going to talk more about that next board meeting. We actually just did a focus group on Thursday, so we're going to talk more. But we just want to give our own feedback from that presentation. And it was something that I think is going to be really positive for our school. I was really impressed. I was actually struck by one of the comments we had in our focus group, where someone essentially said, they were really impressed how it was kind of a positive thing, in the sense that it wasn't don't be a bully, but it was be a leader. And I think that was something that was really cool, because you get teenagers and it's don't do this, don't do that. And so, we've all been there, but this is something that I think it's more about action as opposed to we can't do, prohibition. So I'm really excited for that, and I'm actually part of that Friends of Rachel Club. So I will definitely keep you all posted on what we're doing, but we've got some really great ideas for the next year.
And to finish up, we were just amazed, this Watchdogs program. I had no idea what that was until it was presented. That's incredible, because Rachel's challenge was all about how that one act of kindness can spread. And what these dads are doing to come out and give those acts of kindness and give that attention is what kids need, and then they can spread that happiness and attention to other kids. And that's a really huge benefit, and that program is awesome.
Thank you.
Can I ask Tim a question?
Yes, you
I want to make sure. How are you planning on doing the focus groups? How are you trying to get the information out? Are you doing it by emails to the kids? Are you putting up posters? Or how are you planning on doing that?
So recently, we had our first one of the year last Thursday, and what we do is we bring certain students in during late start, because they're all in the cafeteria. We bring them in, and we have a bunch of topics. We present them to these students, and they give us answers, and we record what they write down, and then we confer with our principal on what they've said and how we can work, to reach the goals that these students have. They range from different class options to, we talked about the athletic fields and stuff like that. And we had positive feedback from the last one. They actually want to change it to be more often. They want twice a month. And I talked to some, especially with spreading it to the athletes and stuff, you think, yeah, that's stupid. But, I've approached some of them. They're actually like, wow, I can say what I want, and then people are going to hear it. And they really like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Administration.
For
first of all, I want to thank you guys for your comments. Those were very interesting tonight, so thank you. Not that they aren't always interesting, but I can tell you put a lot of thought into it, and I look forward to hearing more from your focus group. So thank you for doing that and giving up your sleeping in on Thursdays if that's what you guys used to do. I just have something for the board. I wanted to preview October for the board meetings. We moved to this 2-a-month meeting, so our regular meeting for October is on October 22nd, but we are a learning and growing organization, and that goes from the students all the way up to the board, and so we've been doing these workshops. I know Chris had that finance workshop. So next Tuesday, we're going to have a workshop on PLCs for the board. Much of what the teachers and the students see, or the parents and the students see about teachers in the classroom is what's going on in the classroom. They see you in the classroom, but I'm not sure how much people understand what goes on behind the scenes and how so much of the work of the teachers goes on behind the scenes. The preparing lessons and the developing curriculum, grading papers. I know Amy was doing some of that here tonight. There's so much work that goes in behind that, looking at the results and trying to plan for kids what, develop strategies for students who aren't meeting our expectations. There's so much work. And the process as a district that we adopted was the PLC process. So Brad and Steve will facilitate a workshop next Tuesday night at 7 o'clock for the board, but it's open to the public as well. It'll be a board workshop so that you can get a sneak preview of the work that goes on behind the scenes. So you can see what goes on behind the teachers and the other educators in the district are doing behind the scenes. And so that is next Tuesday night. Also, we had mentioned that the Park District wanted to have, Kathy and I met with their director and the president of their board, and they wanted to have a joint board meeting. They said that in years past, they had the school district and the Park District had a joint board meeting. So we wanted to have one next Tuesday right before our PLC workshop, so at 6 o'clock. I'm inviting you to attend a joint meeting with the Park District. Just a couple questions, really conversations, and just collaborating with our partners across the parking lot. So that would be next Tuesday. Since you're coming in already at 7 for the PLC group, we'd like to invite you to come in at 6 for a joint meeting. It'll be posted jointly for both boards. And that is my comments for tonight.
We're going to start at this end tonight because
nobody wants to go after John.
No. We'll start with Melanie if you have any comments.
I think I talked to Melanie.
First, I'd like to commend the Watchdogs program. It's really heartwarming to see the public service and great outcomes that come from that. That moment of kindness, I think, is something that can be so extrapolative that it just really warms me, and to publicly state there's a watchdog in training here, so I'd be happy to do so with Rotolo and or JB Nelson or both. So I look forward to being able to be a participant in that program. I'd like to thank Dr. Mon for his excellent patience in teaching the board about the budget and having us understand what goes into it. It does seem like a lot of data, and he really makes it easy for us to digest and understand, so we're making the correct decisions here as well. Relating to Tony's motion for the Chromebooks, I really believe that embracing technology is exciting and necessary for our students. I'm sure the data that we'll be able to draw from this will show that this is a positive learning addition to our students, and if any of us don't have a child who has an iPod Touch, an iPhone, an iPad, or all three, like some of my children do, you got to know that that carries over to the classroom as well. And lastly, go Bulldogs.
Every month I think I should start writing things down throughout the month, and then I forget. And so now I'm here and I'm going to quickly write things down. I just want to start off by saying, last night I went to the high school for the class Olympics, and Tina was there with me. We had such a fun time. That was so cool. I really enjoyed myself. So I also want to say go Bulldogs this week. I wish everyone a lot of luck. Enjoy homecoming week, but stay safe. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, making your comments. We do listen, and we do appreciate your comments. I also want to thank Chris, Dr. Mon. God bless you. I don't know how you do it. Like I told you after the workshop, I don't know how your head doesn't explode, but thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
We certainly appreciate it. Go home, relax tonight. Your work begins again tomorrow. So, thank you. And thank you, Tony. I know Brendan will expect his Chromebook in his desk tomorrow morning, but I'm sure he's going to have to wait a couple days at least.
A couple days.
Yeah, a couple days. So, thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Where do we start? First off, I'll start with every year we go out, have an opportunity to go to the III conference, which is an Illinois Association of School Boards. And prior to that, they have a delegate meeting at the General Assembly in which there are certain issues that come up before the association, and I am the delegate up for us for this assembly, and there's a number of issues that come up, and depending on what they are, how they are, you all got a packet on it, read through it. If there's something you feel strong one way or another about it, I would like to, kind of get some feedback and whatnot on how you feel about it, so that I have to go in and vote for this stuff, so I wanted just a general consensus on it. Many of it's just
Is this what they're voting on?
regular stuff, yeah.
Okay.
And so we'll be part of that. And just wanted to make you aware of that. And if you have any questions, holler. I'll try to get as much information out as possible on that. And I'm sure the details, I'll pass it on to you. but I just got this to read, so we'll read through it. Let's see. Last 2 Saturdays ago, the 14th was it? There was a big meeting. I attended. I want to thank them for having me there, and thank Quest for bringing some samples. That was very good. One thing, they went over, it was their first meeting of the year, so it was kind of a more business kind of getting organized and whatnot. But Tony made a presentation, and Dr. Hitchens made a presentation. And then they just took care of some minor business. But I kind of updated them on where we stand with certain things. But the thing that I feel compelled to make a comment about is this program is phenomenal. I think they need to go to the BIC meeting. Next one, I think November 4th. I'm pulling it off the top of my head. But and present it there, and why we can't put this in every school. This is amazing. I'm actually jealous because my kids have now graduated, they're in college, and I don't think Iowa State or Augustana is going to let me do this. But I think it's phenomenal. I'm overwhelmed. I mean, I had chills as a dad hearing about this program. So, and I hope to see this thing explode and expand. That's just a personal note, I guess I wanted to comment on. And then, John, I'll pass on to you because I know you're going to talk about the Fox Valley Career Center. And John and I and Brad went to it a couple Thursday. And awesome program that they got out there. And we should take advantage of it. I hope students continue to take full advantage of those opportunities out there. Vocational, the curriculum that's going on out there is just amazing. And I'll let you kind of get the details on that. So I guess that's it. I'll shut up.
Pretty sure.
Thank you.
Just a couple things. Hoover Wood, you guys really tugged at our motions today. Those were great presentations, and thank you. And BIC is a great group. I know Lou comes to BIC on a regular basis. That'd be a great group to present to because it touches and hits all the PTOs also. I wanted to just, Rachel's challenge was, I went to the presentation, it was really great, but I don't know how many of you tweet, but I do. And I follow several of the high schoolers because that's my daughter. But I have to tell you, after that presentation at the middle school and the high school, there were so many amazing tweets out there, and there were so many kind things said, and it was just contagious. And it was really it was kind of nice to be a part of, and see and hear the things from our students. It was just really a nice thing to be a part of, kind of made you proud of Batavia. So I just want to talk real quickly. I know that you, those of you who don't know, but should know, the board has been meeting with some community members. We've kind of called them chats because it's only 2 members meeting, which is staying within our rules. So all of the board members, I think, at one point have met with several groups at different times the last couple weeks, and they have been really going great. It's open communication, which is a huge part of something that I have been working on with as a board member, is increasing communication. And I think that I know that the feedback we've gotten from each other has been great, and we are more than happy to continue meeting with small groups or groups from the community. And I know a goal is to turn this into a possible once-a-month type forum, open forum for community members. So I just wanted to let everybody know that we have gotten some great feedback and had some great meetings. Some of our meetings have been with 1 community member, some of our meetings have been with 20. Again, just to remind everybody, we act as 7, so we don't vote or take any action during these meetings. And it kind of goes along with your forums. I love that. I think communication is so important, and if we can hear from the students, then that only makes it easier, helps us. So anyway, and have a safe homecoming weekend.
Chris asked how long my notes were this week, and I said it's only on 1 page, but it's size 16, so I can read it, so don't worry.
I'm using it. I'm just sitting next to it, so I can see this.
Kathy went the other direction this way, so it's fine. So here we go. I attended the high school open house with my wife, and as always, it's a great way to see what's going on and to hear what my daughter's teachers are planning for the semester, and I take it for the rest of the district. Board members, we had a nice tour of all the schools in the district. Each of the principals gave us a brief update of what is going on in their buildings, along with the special programs they offer. So it was a good snapshot for us. And again, I plan on visiting Hooverwood School, which we've become friends there pretty quickly. Lisa and I were at the Mid-Valley Co-op 50th anniversary. And as Greg said, and Brad and we were at the Fox Valley Career Center out in Kalen. And in this packet here that you guys have, and thank you, Brad, for getting this done, this is where some of our kids can go to for some of the classes if it's not offered here. And it gives you an idea on, how many of our students come from Batavia or from Geneva or Kalen and so on, and what classes they go in. But some of them are very worthwhile, and especially that last one that we were at, the fire science. What was that? Fire science. Fire science was excellent program, and so it's another opportunity for our kids to get something that we might not be able to offer at the school and so on. So a very good program that we can provide to our students. And so look over the packet if you have a little time, and you just see at least what they offer and how many of our kids are in it. And of course it changes from year to year. I have been to a few events, to say the least, at Hooverwood. I had a nice meeting with Mr. Chris Lowe, who is involved with the Watchdogs, some dads of great students. Even though I do not have a student in the lower grades, he asked if I would participate, and I accepted. And it was a very long day for me. Even though I just retired from teaching, I got home and I was exhausted, and it was nice to be back there and with the kids and teaching them and explaining to them. And they really, I would say, after I was there just for the first hour and they saw me, they kind of, knew why I was there. I had the Watchdog shirt on. They gave me one to wear that day, and they knew exactly, and I think it is a great program, and I'm glad, I talked to Kathy, I said I would like to have them present, because I think it's worthwhile, and I think they are, for any of the principals that are here from the other schools, they would be willing to help you guys, and I've heard that they are interested, so take advantage of it. I think it's a great thing, so, and Greg, they would probably accept you.
You think so?
Yes, I do. Lou would. Lou would, because I told him I'd come back, so. So it was, and I was glad for the presentation. I'm glad you guys all felt that it was a good presentation. And Tony, thank you for getting that ready. My wife and I attended the assembly for Rachel's Challenge, and it was a very moving and touching situation, and I'm glad it came. I attended the school law conference with Kathy and Melanie and Steve, and that was very informative. Some new mandates and some new updates that, again, are coming down to us. We have no say in it, but we have to know what's going on. And Melanie and I had, as Tina said, we had a coffee with with Sylvia, and it was very cordial. So it's another way of communicating. And then finally, this time I want to wish all the athletes, students in drama and band, students in clubs and other activities, or that I've missed, to have a successful school year in their respective endeavors. And then don't forget, this is homecoming week, and go Bulldogs. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Brad, I wanted to thank you. None of us thanked you, I think, because we all understood what you were saying, so we weren't confused and didn't need any extra hand-holding. So we do appreciate the work that you do.
Oh, yes, Brad, we do.
And I also wanted to just take a minute to actually thank my fellow board members. I think there's been a lot of legitimate concern about the fact that we are so new. And I am so heartened to see that they are out in our schools and they are asking questions and attending conferences and listening to Chris talk for 2 hours about our budgets. We've got a group that's willing to really do all of the hard work to make sure that they are as productive as possible. And so I am really, really privileged to have the opportunity to serve with you. So I just wanted to tell you all, thank you for that. We are now going to entertain a motion to go into closed session. To review litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court of administration, I'm losing my voice, or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. There will be no action after a closed session meeting. Do I have a motion to enter closed session?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Impastato, second by...
Beginning.
Thank you. Kathy, would you call the roll?
Leslie?
Yes.
Gaston?
Yes.
Hodge?
Yes.
Impastato?
Yes.
Locke?
Yes.
Stewart?
Yes.
Trammell?
Yes.